Ladies and gentlemen, if everyone could get into place, please, for the official start of proceedings. And a reminder, this is a COVID-safe environment and ensuring all protocols are followed, please. Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Geelong, the Leader of the Opposition, Matthew Guy, Renee, and the Guy family. Please welcome to the stage Shadow Health Minister Georgie Crozier.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to beautiful Geelong. I know Geelong pretty well, having lived 3.5 hours west of here, although it takes a bit longer now that the roads are in such disrepair. I know that my country colleagues know that only too well. We used to holiday down here on the Bellarine as a family. My parents retired here. My father still lives here. And in the final years of my schooling, I was just a few kilometres away. So it's terrific to be here, but it's hot, so let's kick things off. It's my great pleasure to introduce the Leader of the Liberal Party and Leader of the Opposition, Matthew Guy, to talk about our plan to recover, rebuild and make Victoria number one again. It's a plan that I have worked very closely with Matthew and his team in preparing, and I'm particularly proud of the commitment we're making in it, especially in health, where we are today committing, if elected, to halve the surgery waiting times in our first term. The current state of the surgery waiting list is appalling. There are more than 80,000 Victorians on the public waiting list for vital surgery, with a growing number of Victorians now also on the private wait list. And that shameful 80,000 list was at the end of December. That's before the government imposed a Code Brown that banned elective surgeries because of their mismanagement of the health system. The government failed to plan and prepare our health system like they promised to do so. They declared a Code Brown that no other state did, despite other states such as New South Wales having 3.5 times their numbers in hospital and many more in intensive care units. And remember, when it's called elective surgery, it's vital surgery. It's essential surgery. No one wants surgery. It's things like hip replacements, knee and back surgery, cancer screenings, reconstruction after cancer treatments, cleft lip and palate repairs to help babies feed and assist with the development of their face and speech, cataracts, abdominal aneurysms, debilitating, painful conditions and where if they are not treated, those health conditions worsen and the quality of life for those Victorians diminishes. The fact that this surgery is still not happening at full capacity and stopped completely for 23 days is an absolute disgrace and shows the complete lack of compassion and disregard for Victorians in need. But it's not just surgery where people are suffering. There are now more than 150,000 Victorians on the public general dental care waiting list. The waiting time is an appalling 2 years. And down the road at Barwon Health, the waiting time is more than 3 years. Last year, more than 600,000 Victorians were not treated within the recommended time after arriving at a hospital emergency department. For those presenting to an emergency department with a mental health issue, which has of course been so exacerbated due to the lockdowns, due to Daniel Andrews' lockdowns, they're not being seen within the recommended times either. Ambulance response times continue to blow out, and where every second counts, people's lives are being put at risk. Sadly, I could go on and on and on about the issues within Victoria's health system. Do not forget that Daniel Andrews has been Health Minister and Premier for 11 of the past 15 years. The crisis in our health system is on him. But enough of Mr. Andrews. The man I am to introduce is everything that Mr. Andrews is not. He's decent. He uses his colleagues' names rather than calling us that person. He respects everyone in his team, regardless of their gender. He's inclusive, not divisive. He's an honest family man from the burbs who wants the best for his fellow Victorians. And most importantly, he's got a plan to achieve it. My friends, the leader of the Liberal Party, the leader of the Victorian opposition, Matthew Guy.
Thanks, Georgie. Georgie, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who is here today, particularly Peter Walsh, Leader of the Nationals, who's come all the way from Swan Hill. Pete, thank you for being here. And Steph Ryan, the Deputy Leader of the National Party. To David Southwick, the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party, who is here. To all of my parliamentary colleagues who've come down. To all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's a hot day. I know we've got work to do in Geelong this afternoon. So we're going to have this rally and we're going to get out there and sell our message. This message, a plan to recover and to rebuild here in Victoria. Ladies and gentlemen, we know for a fact that the Andrews government is the worst government we've seen in this state since the war. The arrogance, the mismanagement, the waste, the lies and the corruption. We've all seen it. We can see it play out every single day in how these people govern. We know as a party and we know as Victorians what the Labor Party left for this state back in the 1990s, the mess they left and the mess we had to clean up. We did that before, cleaning up their mess, and sadly, we're going to have to do it again. And it's not going to be $20 or $30 billion of debt. This time it'll be $160 billion. It won't be a health system that's on the edge of crisis. The health system in Victoria is in crisis. Add on top of that the mental health system. Add on top of that our kids' education. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot for us to do. A lot for us to do. Back in November, as you know, we kicked off our campaign for government 12 months out. We said we would have no more soul-destroying lockdowns if we were elected to government in November 2022. That was then, and importantly, that is something we commit to even today. And as we see National Cabinet moving out and starting to say to states that you need to go to phase D of your COVID recovery plans, we say absolutely. It is time to move on. It is time for the state to move on, to ditch the masks, to ditch QR codes, to drop destructive density limits, and for God's sake, to get all elective surgery back happening straight away. Folks, it's also time to repeal that pandemic legislation, because we know what that's doing to Victorians and we know what that's done to our state. Let me give you a snapshot. In Victoria, sadly, we've had the world's longest lockdowns. We've had more deaths from COVID in our state than anywhere in Australia. More cases of COVID in this state than anywhere in Australia. Our kids have been kept home longer than anywhere in Australia. Businesses have suffered greater here than anywhere else in Australia. That is not a sign of success of COVID management. That is a sign of failure, a total sign of failure by the state government in their management of COVID in Victorians. And that's why we say enough is enough. Enough of governments that focus on a record debt. Enough of governments that give our children the lowest quality education. Enough of governments that focus on themselves and their internal fighting. Our plan is about addressing the consequences of this mismanagement, of the 262 days of lockdown in Victoria. It's a comprehensive plan, this plan, that has come about because, like all of you, as Liberals, we've listened to Victorians over the last few months, indeed the last few years. It's come about because we understand the real world. Victorians are being left behind by the rising cost of living. Our children are suffering from the lost learning that they've experienced and the interruption to their learning over that point in time. And what they want, what we all want, is that dose of hope and positivity. And that's what our plan is about. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, we are going to fix the healthcare crisis that this government, the Labor government, has created in this state. We will halve hospital waiting lists in our first term of office. We've already said there are things we can do. Building a Melton Hospital, not a want to have, a must have for Melbourne's western suburbs. We'll build it, Labor won't. They'll promise it, we'll build it. Big difference. That's a coalition compared to the Labor Party. We have said that we will build Victoria's first infectious diseases resource centre to manage those with COVID. So should we have another outbreak, we will quarantine the sick and not lock down the healthy. We will source our PPE from Shepparton, where Peter Walsh and I were, to see where it's made. Victorian industry funding a problem to solve Victoria's future pandemic problems. Not sourcing overseas, as the Labor government's doing, but something to solve a problem here by Victorians, made by Victorians, invested by the Victorian government, our government, a coalition government. Ladies and gentlemen, we will focus and fix Victoria's mental health crisis. Our Shadow Minister, Emma Keeley, has already launched a plan to ensure an extra 2,500 mental health care workers into the system, many of those into schools where they're needed the most. A plan we put to the Parliament, a plan our opponents voted against. That should tell you all about their genuine care for mental health. We see mental health and our plan for the biggest drive of mental health care workers in Australia's history as something that is fundamental to recovering and rebuilding our state. Because it's Victorians' mental health that has suffered so dramatically over the last 2 years, now the third year of the pandemic that we enter. We must do something about it. No more press releases from a government who's not focused, action from a coalition government that will fix the problem. We will keep our schools open. It is our plan. It is my mission as a father to make sure that every Victorian child catches up on lost learning, because lost learning they have had. Students from Mildura to Mallacoota to Warrnambool and Melbourne, they've had lost learning. They've been kept at home, and many parents, all of us who are parents or know of children who have been through this, know what they have experienced. David Hodgett, our Shadow Education Minister, has listed a very clear plan: keeping schools open, treating schools as a bubble, making sure schools are safe places for teachers and for students. That is our plan to keep kids at school. It's real, it's sensible, it will work, and if this government won't do it, we will. Folks, let me tell you clearly, we will keep the cost of living down because Victorians are falling behind under Labor. Falling behind. Brad Batten and I were in the city of Casey recently. He's there all the time. And we were listening to stories firsthand of families that have fallen behind under this government. They look at the newspapers and see ads for more and more support workers in Daniel Andrews' office being paid huge salaries, but they are falling behind. Their kids are home from school. Their businesses can't open properly. They've got density limits. They can't keep up the rent and they can't keep up home mortgage payments. They are falling behind. And Victorians are sick to death of being taxed out of existence. So let today me give you a guarantee. The next Liberal Nationals coalition government from November this year, we will have a commitment. No new taxes in Victoria. And the money we do collect, and spend, we'll spend it wisely. Because Victorians are sick of reading of cost blowouts. The Metro Tunnel's blown out. The North East Link is blown out. Level crossing removals have blown out. The Westgate Tunnel is blown out. The Murray Basin Rail, to the extent the government funded any money, blew out and they scrapped it. This government can't touch a project without it blowing out. And it's not a fault of those who are administering it, it's the fault of the person in charge, and the buck stops with the minister and the government. That's why they've got to go. Folks, this document says recover and rebuild. And nothing is more central to recovering and rebuilding than getting business, small business, back on track. We are the parties of small business in country and regional Victoria and in Melbourne and Geelong. And we intend to make sure that our government, a coalition government, is focused on recovering and rebuilding all business, but particularly small business across the state. We have got a $2.5 billion strategy to re-energise manufacturing. And that is going to see reinvestment right across our state. $1 billion quarantine for outside of Melbourne. To see businesses where Peter Walsh and I were in Shepparton, where I was with Louise Staley in Ararat, where I was with Gary Blackwood in Warragul, to see them re-establish and focus, to rebuild, to rehire, not to be shut down, not to be locked down, not to be penalised at the first instance by the government, but to be encouraged by the government, to make our state the place to do business again. That's what we did in 2010 to 14. That's what we achieved. That's what we achieved in 1992 to 1999. That's what we'll achieve again from 2022 onward. Let me give those in Melbourne a guarantee as well, because I know as a Melburnian lifelong, something very dear to our hearts was to see Melbourne as the world's most livable city. And we are and we were, and we should be again. But under this government, that crown has been lost. It is our mission to make Melbourne the most livable city in the world again, something we're very proud of, very focused on, to get overseas students back, to get our economy going, our CBD pumping, our suburbs energised, to give Melbourne its mojo back. As a Melburnian, I want nothing less for the city I love than to see Melbourne as the world's most livable city again. And I want to give you a guarantee, and I want to give you a clear guarantee, something this government won't, something they'll obfuscate. They'll give you words and spin, it'll be a press release and maybe a fluffy animal with a minister of the day. What they'll never tell you is what we need to hear to get our state really recovering, to get all of us focused, to keep our kids at school, to keep our country towns going, to energise them again, to energise Melbourne and Geelong, our suburbs, all of us, our communities, Australians who have been here for 4 generations and brand new ones as well. And that is a commitment for no more lockdowns. The policies of 2020 and 2021 are policies of the past. It's time to move on. The government, in the 3rd year of the pandemic, has had 2 years to get the health system right. They've had 2 years to get protocols in place, to make our schools safe, to find ways to keep business open. They've had 2 years to get it right. They've had promises of 4,000 beds, which they haven't delivered. They've had promises of business support that haven't materialised. It's all about a government that hasn't done the work over 2 years. We will, and that's why we can give that commitment. No more lockdowns for Victoria under a coalition government. Our plan is not a small one. Our plan is not just words. Our plan are the principles under which a Liberal Nationals government will drive our state forward. This is a plan that we've invested a lot of time in, that all members of our team have contributed to. It's a plan, it's a manifestation of all of what we believe. As MPs from the far north of Victoria to Gippsland to the southwest to Melbourne, it's a plan to get our state back on track. All of our state, all Victorians, not just the few who support the government or the union movement, but all Victorians. It's a plan to unite us. It's a plan to focus us as a state, to make us number one again. It's not a plan to hold us back, to say what you can't do. It's a plan to say what we can do as a state, what we can achieve as a state, where we want to be as a state, the state we want to bequeath to our children. This is the mentality of the Liberal and National parties. I said when I came back to the leadership, I want a dose of positivity for all of us, for our parties to be infectious on Victorians. That's what today's about. That's why we're in Geelong. That's why we're going to go around the state in the same way and sell this message, to tell every single Victorian where you live, what your background might be. You all matter to us. You're all part of our recovery. We are not here to pick winners and losers like the government does. We're not here to scowl at people, lecture them, berate them like the Premier does. We want you to come with us. We want to solve your problems, which is why we want to fix the elective surgery crisis. We want to make your kids confident about going to school, which is why we must solve the mental health crisis. We want Victorian agriculture to see its best days ahead of it, not behind it. Victorian manufacturing to be enthusiastic about the future. All of us as Victorians to know that this is the state of the nation, that we should be number one again, and that this plan is the way we can do it. Victorians have got a choice in November. More of the same, lockdowns, hectoring, berating, negativity, divide and conquer, Labor, or they can choose the coalition, the Liberals and Nationals. We are focused. We are dedicated. We are clear about what we want to achieve for our state. Our principles for government 10 months out are there for all to see. We want to recover. We want to rebuild this state. And we are not going to let this Labor government see us decline any further. We are going to be the ones who focus on rebuilding. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my mission to make Victoria number one again. This rally in Geelong is just one part of it. We're going to hear from other speakers today, in particular, outside and all of us, about what we want to do to rescue this state. Our plans are clear. Our focus is direct. Let's get on and do it. In November, change the government and rebuild Victoria. Thank you very much.
and gentlemen, please thank the next Premier of our state, Matthew Guy. Can I tell you how extraordinarily proud I am to be part of this team, part of Matthew and Peter's team? Because you know what? I know that if I ever have an issue, I can bring it to Matthew and Peter and they will listen because they are about team. They get team. I am brimming with confidence about our chances in November because I know that our team is focused on all Victorians, not just some Victorians. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, this is an election that we must win, not for ourselves, but for every single Victorian. Our state is broken. We cannot afford another 4 years of the Labor Party. The cost is just too great. It is too great. Those suffering in pain, on endless hospital waiting lists, the statistics that we heard from Georgie today, they need us to win. The small businesses that Matthew has met with and spoken to, the hundreds of thousands of small businesses around our state who have been ruled by the uncertainty caused by lockdowns, they need us to win for them. The mums and dads who have watched their kids over the last couple of years suffering from stress, from fear, from anxiety, as they have endured school closure after school closure, they need us to win for them. Even some Labor MPs need us to win for them. And win we will. Win we will, because you will not find a man more passionate or more driven or a better advocate for our state than Matthew Guy. And I've worked with him now for 7 years since I was elected, and I can tell you that for a fact. We will win with Matthew as our leader. I know his energy, his drive, and his determination to rebuild our state and to make sure that we are number one. He will not rest until he sees that happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just 286 days left to tell Victorians how we will be different and why we will be different. Let's make every single one of them count. I now want to invite the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party, David Southwick, to the stage to tell you some more about plans for this afternoon. But please join me once more in thanking the Leader of the Liberal Party, the Leader of the Opposition, and the next Premier of our state, Matthew Guy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, are we fired up? Come on, are we fired up? Absolutely, we're fired up. We have a great leader in Matthew Guy, and we have a team Liberal and National, and that's what we need to do for Victoria. We had a bit of a football analogy last week, which a few of you heard about, the great Kevin Sheedy. Well, let me give you another football analogy. We are in the fourth quarter. No, make no mistake, we are in the fourth quarter, a make or break it for all of us, but most importantly for Victoria. And we have to win for all Victorians. We must do it. We have to do it for our children, for our grandchildren, for all of us. And that's the challenge for all of us today. And I ask you, because footy's just not won in the change room, it's won out on the ground, and that's what we need to do from here. Matthew has given you a plan today, and our team has given you a plan compared to the other lot. This is a plan that will take us forward. As Georgie said, with healthcare, with mental health, with schools, with cost of living, with small business, and with no more lockdowns. That's our plan to recover and rebuild and to make Victoria number one again. And that's what we're going to do. So where to from here? First of all, thank you, Ross. Thank you, Ross, for hosting us here today in what could become the future of manufacturing and jobs and industry. It's no coincidence we're here today. Please thank Ross. Now, after today, It's not about us all going home. It's about us going out and talking to people that are suffering and the pain out there in the community. Now, it all starts with these seats in Geelong. It's about turning Geelong blue. It's about not neglecting any single person, no matter where they come from, no matter what their background. We are the party for all people. So I ask you today, let's get out, let's be proud, let's knock on doors, let's talk to the community, let's talk to all Victorians, and let's make Geelong blue again, and let's return good government back to Victoria. Thank you very much for coming.
And I want to take a chance.